Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another fun episode of So You're Ready to Date, the podcast. We're so excited to be back today. And with summer happening and with travel season upon us, we thought it would be fun to dive into looking at what it might look like if you're going to be traveling with a new significant other and taking that first trip. And I was just talking to Lisa a little bit about the fact that it is may not always be roses and butterflies if your planning does not, if the way that you plan trips and plan adventures and plan travel does not always look the same. So kind of talk about what that can look like, talk about some of the hurdles that maybe we've bumped into along the way, and maybe even a little bit about how to overcome them.
Well, this is a whole different animal, right? This is you are stuck in a car, a plane, a tiny hotel room. This is not like you're just at home and you could like literally go to separate parts. Sometimes you're stuck in fairly close quarters with this someone that you profess to love and like and want to travel and do this stuff with. And now all of a sudden, like you said, you may have different ways that you approach a trip, the way you approach a vacation, time off, all of that kind of stuff. So being really clear and open in your communication about like expectations and what is fun for you versus what is fun for them and kind of what you want to get out of the trip, I think is just as important as finding the right hotel, planning the right excursions, doing all of that other fun stuff. This is like the nitty gritty that you should hopefully figure out before you start booking plane tickets and air and hotels.
And it might even be just a weekend getaway, but there's so many different aspects that you can dive into. And whether it's actually your first time or your 15th time, I know when my significant other and I went on a trip together the first time, it was pretty smooth because he planned it and I kind of let him take the reins. But when it comes to travel, I'm really a control freak. I love to travel. I've been traveling my whole life. I have a system that works really well for me with how I travel and what I do. And I am pretty laid back. And so when airport delays happen, when your plane gets switched, and it's easy, I know what to do. I don't get overly frustrated with it. I can go get the arrangements worked out, figure out what flight we're getting switched to, and get all of that taken care of versus traveling with somebody who was not as experienced but was trying to take the reins. And I remember we got there okay, we made it through the whole trip okay, and we're coming back and our flights got canceled and had to be rescheduled. And he handled it very well. He did not take any of it out on me, but you could tell that he was very frustrated. And this was a first time experience for both of us together. And he wanted to handle the cancellations and rescheduling very differently than I wanted to handle it. So I just remember there was some bumps and bruises and some growing pains there. Let's just say it was not the most fun homecoming that I've ever had when coming back from a trip.
So say you're traveling with someone for the first time, because I've traveled with like friends and family, but never traveled with like a boyfriend slash significant other. And because things are getting serious with this guy I'm seeing, Liam mentioned there's been the hint of travel at some point. So what would you say is probably the best first step if you're, say you're doing like the first big trip with somebody, whether that's like a flight or a trip out of town? I think that first one is kind of nerve-wracking in and of itself, regardless of how big it is. What would you say in hindsight maybe you would do first if you're going on that first big trip with somebody new, um, to maybe not completely avoid some growing pains, but to maybe lessen the chance that somebody's gonna lose their absolute mind at some point?
Well, firstly, so I came out of a long-term relationship to my ex-husband, and our we did travel very well together, but it was very stressful before we left the house. because he was always also a very different traveler than I was. Especially road trips, not so much in the plane, but that too, but road trips especially. He was always, we've got to take all of the tools and we've got to take all of the supplies so that I can fix anything and everything that might go wrong with the car, up to and including the radio. Like, we have to have all of that stuff. And I need days and days to plan and to pack and to put stuff in the car and to make sure everything is just right. And I am one of those people where I am a minimalist, and we have AAA. Great. Let's just throw our bags in the car and go. And so, kind of coming through that, and packing and planning was very stressful for him. And so he would get grumpy before we would even leave the house and before we would go. So, from that perspective, it's one of those things where you playfully ask questions like, what kind of traveler are you? What do you not leave home without? And really starting to just get to know, and fun and flirty, right? Like, let's get to know somebody. Let's be fun about it. Let's have some fun with it and talk about how somebody travels. Like, do you plan every minute of your vacation, and do you know where you're going to be every minute of the day? Or do you leave some room to fly by the seat of your pants? And how does that work? And what does the first trip look like? And are you going to do a weekend, or are you going to do a week, or are you going to meet family, or are you going on just a mini getaway? And understanding kind of what the expectations are from that perspective, but just doing it in a very fun and flirty way where there's no pressure is super helpful to be able to make sure that you can get on the same page. And it also, when you're asking those questions, it gives you an opportunity to go ahead and talk about what your preferences are. I am very last minute pull into town and look for a hotel as we're getting into town, because I never know how long I'm going to want to drive person, versus he is very much I'm not sure that there's going to be a hotel, and I have a lot of anxiety about that. So I need to plan these hotel stops in advance. And so, really understanding what's going to make each of you comfortable in order to make the trip flow in the best possible manner. And it also, are you going in on that together? Are you both planning it? Or is this, I want to take you on a vacation, or I want to take you on a getaway, and so I'm planning that, and it's up to me to be in the back seat, or up to you to be in the back seat and be supportive and just come along for the ride. And at that point, what do you need to be able to do that?
So these are a lot of those conversations that you should be having right before you get into the car. How do you travel? And like, I get the idea of wanting to surprise someone and take the reins, but there are people who do not do well with surprises. So if you know that your significant other does not do well with the idea of, I don't know where we're going, then maybe, saying, hey, I've packed your bag, we're going on a plane. And you're like, where? Surprise. No. Not everybody reacts to those grand gestures in quite the same way. But I like the idea of making it not necessarily so serious of, yeah, this is just part of our get to know you process. If it's something that you both enjoy, and in doing this in during times when maybe they're not stressed, where you're not trying to plan a trip and figure out now how do you like to travel. This is kind of like what getting to know what their favorite snack is, what their favorite color is, some of those like base things. If this is something you guys enjoy doing and potentially want to do together, then trying to figure out, okay, if he is an anxious traveler or if I'm the anxious traveler, how can we support each other so that when we get on the road, we're not starting from this place of, I'm already grumpy, I'm already ticked off. So good luck sitting with me in a car for the next 8 hours or whatever it is. But trying to come to this space of, okay, I understand. How can I support you in this? What do you need from me? What do I need from you, so that it's a little smoother road?
And I love the fun and flirty approach to it. And that was, I was talking about the story of the first time that we flew together, but we also decided that for our first true road trip, we were going to take a 24-hour drive out to Oregon from South Dakota. And that was an experience too, because you got to break that up. And we decided we were going to camp along the way, and we did. But there was also some unspoken stuff that came up from spending that much time in a car together for the first time, when you're spending 24 hours a day together for 3 days trying to get someplace in a little cramped car where you don't really have the space to go do anything or experience anything other than staring out the windshield. And so having some of those conversations too. Do you prefer to drive? Do you prefer to be the passenger? And even understanding that, I can't tell you how many road trips I've been on where I've been the driver, but if I have a choice, I am going to take the passenger seat all day long, every day. And just understanding what is the preference, because that can make a trip more enjoyable too. And again, it doesn't have to be serious conversation. It can just be like, hey, we're going on a trip. Do you want to fly or do you want to drive? Hey, we're going on a trip. Are you going to be the driver or are you going to be the passenger? And playing the would you rather game with your own made up questions about that can really give you some insight. And hey, we're going to go on a trip. Or do you prefer the city or do you prefer the country? Do you prefer a log cabin or do you prefer the top of a hotel in New York City? I don't know. Whatever that looks like for you, but just really understanding what those preferences are and playing it like a get to know you can really make some of those plans flow more smoothly.
Well, and I think, like, again, coming back to that expectation of, okay, this is what I expect. Or like, if we're driving, are we listening to music or podcasts or books? Or who's picking the music? Who's in charge of that? If you're the passenger, will you be responsible for passing me snacks and water? And so it sounds, yes, there are big things to work out, but there are also all of these little things, like who's in charge of getting the snacks? How often are we stopping? Do we need to work out who's making a playlist? And what if we don't have the same tastes in what we listen to? How are we going to pass the time without, like you said, just staring at the window in complete silence for 12 hours a day?
Okay, I just have to ask, isn't it common sense that the driver gets to pick the music?
See, that's what I thought too, but driver picks the music, the passenger just, is there.
He pays it, but the driver picks what you listen to, right? I'm the one that's driving. I'm the one that has to stay awake. I'm the one that gets to pick. See,
Yes.
that's a thing. You might have to have that conversation, because that was not what my significant other thought at the time when we went on a trip. And I was like, nope, sorry. You got to be listening to some Pink and some,
I will tell you when to change it and what to switch it to. You're in charge of that, but I'm ultimately picking what goes on the radio or what we listen to.
Yes, exactly. Okay, I'm glad that you and I agree on that driver's choice here.
Passenger shuts their mouth because they're just along for the ride. Right?
Yes, and whether that is a 15-minute road trip or a 24-hour road trip doesn't really matter. Typically, driver's choice. Driver gets to pick the music. That's the rule in our house.
So
and luckily for you, I still prefer to be the passenger. Oh, so yes. Anyways, you were going to say something?
So when you're actually, okay, so we've talked about like the travel scenario, like, so you're getting there, you've gotten there. What suggestions, what kind of advice would you have when you get to your destination? Because I think travel carries its own special set of nerves and what do I want to say? Stress. That's what I was looking for. So, but once you actually get to said destination, that can also, I just want to lay by the pool and read my book all day, or are we going to see every site? Or if we're visiting family, how long am I expected to hang around with your family if I'm meeting for the first time, or if maybe I'm not quite ready to spend uninterrupted time with them. So how do you navigate those waters of deciding, okay, once we've gotten to our destination, now what do we do?
I think some of that is individual, very, very individualistic. I don't need a lot of that detail planned out for me. Now, if I do have expectations, or if I do like, hey, this is when I get someplace, I need an hour to decompress and I just need to go find a space to be by myself for a minute to decompress and to absorb the travel. Sometimes that's the thing. So I will say that. But otherwise, once we get there, I am usually okay, I'm here now. What are we doing? Let's go, let's go, let's go. Or no, you want to go sit by the pool? Cool. Let me grab my swimsuit and we're going to go sit by the pool for a little while. So I'm very much a go with the flow traveler. So I don't need all of those little pieces worked out. I need to know what day we're leaving. I don't even always need to know what day I'm coming home. I need to know what time I'm leaving and what time to be ready for. And I need to know whether or not we're going to be busy or whether I'm going to get to do things or whether I'm going to have a lot of downtime. And that's pretty much all I need to know. And the rest I can handle pretty well. I take whatever comes in stride. However, that does not mean that I don't need to set expectations if something's coming up, if I need downtime when we get there, or if there is something along the way that it's like, okay, we're just going to do this relaxing vacation, but right here, I want to go do this because we're going to be in this area. Those are expectations that I take it upon myself to set with my partner rather than ask my partner to set everything, because maybe your partner is not the planner. Maybe you're a planner, but your partner's not the planner. And he is the one or she's the one that's making the arrangements. At that point, you have to say, okay, in order for me to have structure, here's what I'm putting in as a structure, and taking that to my partner and saying, okay, here's how I see this going. Are there things that I need to take off of this list because that's going to interfere with what your plans are? And that's okay too. If your partner doesn't plan the way that you do, it's up to you to meet the needs that you have for yourself and making a plan and making sure that you're comfortable with those arrangements and bringing that forward and saying, okay, this is how I operate. This is what I need. How does this look?
Well, I think you bring up a good point of you won't always necessarily have the same interest. You may be excited about both going to the same place, but maybe you want a zip line and he wants to go visit some castle or whatever it is. So the idea that you have to do everything together, again, maybe you want to, and not saying that that's not a good idea, but you're allowed to have different interests in wherever you're going. And it might be fun to go do separate things and then come back and say, look at these pictures. This is what we got to do. This is what I got to see. And to kind of share that with your partner, with your person, and be like, maybe that'll spark some interest and they want to do something similar to that the next day. Or maybe they're just like, hey, that was really cool. You want to see what I did? So letting yourself have those separate interests, pursuing those, and then coming back and being like, see, this was awesome. I'm glad I got to do this because now I'm happy and not resentful that I had to go do this thing that I had maybe no interest in doing.
Yes. I think that's important too, is remembering that although you're traveling together, you are still an individual person, and it is okay to not always be glued at the hip. And sometimes with those first trips and those first vacations, it's fun to go with other couples and other people and make it a group activity versus a nice romantic getaway or a romantic stay or whatever that is, because then you feel like you have to be glued at the hip to each other because you can't leave each other to go do stuff on your own. I know sometimes that's a thing. So sometimes it's fun to go with other couples, other friends, and do a large group vacation. That way you can break off and go spend time with people doing whatever it is that interests you and then come back together and talk about things.
You know, my sister was saying something about that. One of her good friends, they were going on a couple's trip, and for the first time it was like they were almost matched, where you had one part of the couple who wanted to go and be active all the time, and the other half of the couple was like, I'm okay being active a little at the time, but I really kind of just want to chill by the pool. So then they go as this big group, and all of a sudden there's a group of people who want to go and be active and do these things, and then you have a group of people who wants to try this new swim up bar or wants to go sit at the beach. And so now you've got people to do things with who have similar interests, but again, you don't have to be glued at the hip to your partner. You still get to have interaction, you still get to do some stuff that you want to do, but your partner still has the freedom and the ability to go and enjoy their vacation in the way that they want to as well. So I love the like group idea, so that you have so many different personalities. You're going to find somebody who wants to maybe tag along with you if you don't want to go by yourself.
Yes. The group activities or group traveling is a lot of fun just because I don't know, we've done that a few times and it's always fun. The girls and the guys split up and the girls go do stuff and the guys go do stuff. And, you know, my partner will go shopping, but I'm not a huge fan of shopping. But sometimes if you're in a different country or you're in a different part of the world, you just want to kind of go out and see the sights and look at the shops and see what catches your eye and see what the customs, traditions, what all of that looks like. And my partner, or my current partner more than my ex-husband, but he is not as much on a, oh, let's go window shopping and just go gaze around and see what's happening. He would much rather maybe go sit in front of the television and watch sports or something like that on his vacation. That's relaxing to him. So having some people to go do other things with and break up has always been a fun way to make sure that you can both get the most out of the time that you're spending in a new place, but then you still have the room to yourself. You still have plenty of quality time. If you want to go off by yourselves and have that quality time as a couple, it's still there, but it's not 24/7, especially if you don't live together or you're not used to spending that much time. I know I had a friend, and this is not a significant other relationship, but I had a friend that I went on a long, long road trip with. We're talking weeks, but I had never spent that much time with one person just like that in my entire life. Even when I was thinking about all the trips I'd gone on with my ex, and even when I thought of all that other stuff. And it really made me appreciate the fact that I need that space to decompress and be by myself. And so when I'm traveling, the ability to be around other people and not just be around that one person that I'm traveling with makes traveling together so much more enjoyable.
Yes, that understanding for time to yourself, because I understand that. I live by myself, have for like years and years and years now. So I'm used to having plenty of time where, yeah, it's just me. I get control of the entire bed. I get to watch what I want to watch. And all of a sudden, you know, when you're with people, even the people you really know and like, I know when I travel with my sister, it's we have this understanding that at some point we're going to stop talking. We're going to just look out the window, listen to our music. Because we know it's nothing against the other person. I just need to go inside a little bit. I just need to introvert for just a bit here. I'll come back out. We'll be fine. But that understanding of this is how I need to decompress so that I don't just become a raging, not nice person. And again, it's all part of this communication because you'd hate to necessarily ruin, but to have that an unnecessary fight because you're not communicating what your needs are. And just because you're out of your comfort zone and not at home does not mean that you're still not allowed to ask for what you need. And that might mean you have to go down to the pool or find someplace private, or maybe it's like, hey, can you go down to the sports bar for like an hour or two so that I can nap, or whatever it might be. But practice asking for what you need so that you have that time to decompress, to energize yourself, to recharge, so that you can still come back and fully enjoy the whole vacation experience.
Something that we didn't talk about yet that I think is really important: introvert versus extrovert when you're a traveler. Oh my gosh. So I have a family member who is an in law who is very, very introverted, extremely introverted. And recently, and they've been together for a long time, but recently they have had a trip, came up to visit to the family, and we did a large family gathering. It wasn't just the immediate family, it was the large family gathering. And there were expectations of hanging out, going and doing things. And as her introverted self, she had a very difficult time telling the family that, hey, I need to decompress. I'm overstimulated. I have peopled way too much and I need a few minutes. Maybe that's to go take a nap. Maybe that's to whatever, but I need some time. And it was, even I was guilty of it because I wanted to spend time with her. I don't get to see her very often. She was here. It was, come on, let's go do this. It'll be so much fun. And then we were going out on the boat, and my other family member has another boat. So we were going to have two boats. We were going to tie the boats together on the lake, and we were going to hang out. And she's like, now there's going to be two boats. That's just too much. Like, why do you guys want to be around each other that much? I can't do it. And it took somebody going, hey, she's an introvert and she's had too much, and I'm an introvert and I get it. And it took that, somebody saying that to me before I'm like, oh, I got your back. You stay here. We're going to take the kids and we're going to go. As long as you don't care if we take the kids, you can stay here and take a nap. And it was a matter of, she didn't express what she needed because she was trying to please the people around her instead of taking care of herself. And so it's okay to ask for what you need too, even if you are around your significant other's family. Sometimes you may just need that introverted moment, and it's okay.
Regardless of how well you get along with said family, regardless of how nice they are and the relationship you have cultivated and created, you still are going to probably need that space. I mean, even within my own family, it's too much people. They're just, I'm not used to you. I'm not used to being around, like, especially when the extended family gets together. So yes, giving yourself that permission to be like, listen, I appreciate where this invite is coming from. I know it's coming from a good place, but I just need time to myself. I will meet up with you guys at dinner at such and such a time. So sometimes even coming back and saying, like, a compromise of sorts, being like, hey, I'm not going to do this particular activity, but I'm really looking forward to the weenie roast when we later. So letting them know that it's, it's just that I need some time and some space for myself. Again, not that you ever need to, but sometimes if you really care about the people and the relationships, you can say, hey, like you said, I've peopled too much. I think most of us can relate to that. I just need the quiet. I think that's sometimes it. I just need it to be quiet. I just need my own thoughts. Just to breathe.
Isn't that just heaven when you get that, when you're like in this middle of this need and you're like, I need this. Suddenly it's like, oh, relaxation. Yes. So if we have not hit on some of the stumbling blocks that you've come up with when traveling with your significant other, your first trip together, your 54th trip together, it doesn't matter if there are stumbling blocks that you run into along the way or would like to hear about somebody else's experiences with or would like us to address, please drop us a line at soyou'readytodate@gmail.com. We'd love hearing from you guys and want to make sure that we are keeping the topics relevant to what's going on in your life and making sure we're addressing your relationship questions. So you're ready to date at gmail.com, and we will be back next week with another great episode.